further ado, I am going to introduce Mr. Fernando Castro, that is speaking to us today. Having only heard a bit of his story, I know that he specializes in multicultural research, doing Spanish and Portuguese work, and is going to drop some knowledge on us. Welcome, Fernando.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It is so amazing to see new faces and to be here with the group. I saw pictures of the conference. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it this year, but I was dying to be there. It was nice to see the pictures on LinkedIn and other social media stuff. So today I'm going to talk about the power of a cultural broker. And let me share this with you real quick. Yeah, so my name is Fernando. I was a freelancer for a number of years, working with interviewing and recruiting for multicultural audiences. And and I specialize in Hispanic and Latino communities. And as you may know, there's a huge need now, or a huge demand for Spanish-speaking research. And that was the area that I was trying to come in and fill in the gap. For many reasons, of course, to make money, but also to help to bridge this gap. There is a gap that I see between market research companies and Hispanic audiences, and cultural brokering, or becoming a cultural broker, is one way that you can help yourself or your company, your business, to reach Spanish speaking audiences. So let me start. So what is a cultural broker? The name is kind of self-explanatory. I really like the name. This term has multiple definitions, but cultural brokering is defined as the act of bridging, linking, or mediating between groups or persons of differing cultural backgrounds for the purpose of reducing conflict or producing change. And that is taken from the Georgetown University. They have a huge tab on their website for DEI, and that's taken from there. But this is it. A cultural broker is a person who fills in the gap, who bridges different cultures. And I think that's very important and very pertinent to where we are in the market right now, especially when it comes to multicultural audiences. So using a cultural broker can improve access and significantly improve outcomes for market research. And my background is I'm Brazilian, and I came to the US for college. And then I started working with multicultural audiences by teaching English as a second language. And then in Massachusetts, that's where I have been for the last 10 years. There's a huge demand for Portuguese and Spanish-speaking translators, anything, right? Because people are coming and people are here. And then in market research, I noticed that there was a gap, especially when it came to multicultural audience, how market research companies can actually execute well research with multicultural audiences. Sometimes the market research companies have the desire and even the money, right? The funds to execute research like that. But then something's amiss, and Hispanic speaking audiences, they are sometimes very hard to reach. And then that's when you need a cultural broker, somebody from the inside, or someone who understands all the nuances culturally speaking, of that target group. So how can a cultural broker help? Creating trust, as you may have experienced, in trying to work with Hispanic communities, especially the unacculturated communities. Unacculturated, I mean people who live only in the Spanish-speaking culture, not so much in the American culture. So Spanish is the dominant language. Those people are very hard to reach. And there's a lot of demand now for healthcare projects with this population. So, this population, you've got to have a cultural broker, somebody who can call them in their home language, but not only call and speak the language, but also have the right tone, the right vocabulary. If you're working with older Hispanics, there is a way of talking to them as opposed to a second generation individual. So a cultural broker builds trust between the project manager, the company itself, and the audience. And that by building trust, by creating trust, you can see that the results, the data that they produce, their insights are much deeper and much meaningful. So a cultural broker builds better communication between researchers and multicultural audiences. There's a lot of skepticism when working with multicultural audiences. Is this, project? Is this, project that I'm going to get paid, scam? Right? So a cultural broker helps this audience understand that it's not a scam. It's not something that will, get their social security or post something on Facebook. Multicultural audiences, especially unacculturated, by fear derived from many many sources, immigration, their status, they're much more skeptical to participate. So having a cultural broker who can call them and talk to them in a culturally appropriate way, then that's how we can get them in. So a cultural broker enriches knowledge in both systems, right? We don't know everything that there is to know about everything out there. So a cultural broker can help you really target your knowledge about this one target audience that you're working with. And a cultural broker is especially helpful in recruiting. So a cultural broker helps with the destigmatizing participation in market research. Like I said, a lot of multicultural audiences from various backgrounds, they are very skeptical and participate and come or be on a Zoom IDI with you. And that can vary, especially unacculturated audiences. The vocabulary itself, right? A lot of these people, this audience, they acquire enough vocabulary to be proficient in whatever they have to do. But then in an IDI, now you're asking how they feel when they go to the doctor, or if they feel seen or heard, when they go to the hospital. So they might be tapping into a different type of vocabulary that they may not be comfortable with. So a cultural broker is a person who can explain all that in their own language, therefore creating trust, therefore creating better results and outcomes. A cultural broker also builds capacity in the community, not only your audience, but also your team, right? It brings knowledge to your team, a knowledge that you may not have had an experience to work with before. And a cultural broker offers a more holistic approach. And when I say approach, I mean a cultural broker, because he has insider knowledge of one audience, it can really help market research companies that don't have that knowledge to see your audience as a whole individual with all the complexities, with all the beauty that comes with just being human beings, right? In this world of AI, being human now is something that we really have to show. So a cultural broker helps your market research company see your audience as a whole human being and give you insight in how to work with them in a more successful way. And then who are they, right? Who are these people? So they are your first and a half generation immigrants. I do have a resource here from Harvard University. I can also share this deck of slides if you want. So Harvard University defines first generation and 1.5 generation immigrants as, let me put this here real quick, right here. I'm gonna read it from here, guys. A person who's a first generation immigrant is defined as one who is born outside of the US. So those are the immigrants, right? A 1.5 generation immigrants are individuals who came to the US as children. And a second generation immigrants are born in the US, so they're the sons and daughters of the immigrants, right? So those are your cultural brokers. And I'm gonna say that in general, you're gonna see more of second generation immigrants, the sons and the daughters, and their parents are Hispanic or Brazilian or what have you. Those people can really add cultural knowledge and insights to your team. Sorry, I'm trying to go fast here. One thing that I do, and maybe that I'm just giving you what I do, my secrets, but I do work with a lot of pastors of multi-ethnic churches, especially for recruiting. I think in some communities, religion is very strong. So, getting your ties or getting connections with pastors of multi-ethnic churches can really help you reach, in a successful way, multicultural audiences. So that's one thing that I would suggest you do. Community leaders, advocates, right? You can see here in the slide that the common denominator is people within their community that they trust. So I think our jobs as market research, folks, is to build those bridges with these people, with the cultural brokers, so that when we need to do research or projects with multicultural audiences, we have our bridges already built, right? And then the cultural brokers can explain the projects. They can work with you in order to end the project successfully. And in healthcare, which is mostly what I do, nurses and CNAs. Of course, in the hierarchy of nursing, CNAs are on the bottom, but CNAs are really the people who actually, deal with the patients in a more direct way. And you have a huge, enriched, pool to pull from when it comes to CNAs. They themselves are from different backgrounds and multicultural backgrounds. So reaching them, is a really successful way to, not only get cultural brokers for your team, but also people who can get you to the finish line and successfully complete a project. And translators, of course, the language barrier can really help you or can impede the success of a project. So translators, sometimes they can also act as cultural brokers. So This is where I got everything from, and some research that I did on my own, but it's from the Georgetown University. And they have a huge resource there for healthcare and culture. So if you do healthcare and you're looking for working with multicultural audiences, that's a good resource for you. And these are the questions I'd like for you to discuss in the group, right? And I know that somebody's going to put them in the chat. So what does your team actively do when working with multicultural audiences? Of course, I'm talking about a cultural broker and multicultural audiences. That's what I love doing. And I know that, your market research company may specialize in something, but, it's going to come a time where they're going to ask, hey, what can you tell me about your influence or your feasibility with Hispanics or Brazilians or what have you? So it's something that you got to be thinking about now. So questions for you to discuss in the group is, what does your team actively do when working with multicultural audiences? And the second question, if you have time, is do you use or have a cultural broker on your team?